Yeah.
That's the new intro right there. That's it. That's it. Well, hello everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Habitual Growth Podcast. As always, I'm Nathan and this is Lisa. And this is the podcast where excuses come to die, discipline is built, and the lives are being changed. We are all about transformation here by taking action, not just listening. So today, when you make your way through this episode, take a couple of things that you pull out that are value add for you and apply them to your own life. Because in doing this, you help yourself become successful, you help others become successful, and you make this world a better place. So, Lisa, we're going to touch on a really interesting subject today. And I know you said you don't know what we're talking about, even though we covered it yesterday a little bit. But we are going to be talking about the word no, and not in the traditional sense of protecting your time by telling people no. We're going to flip this around and we're actually going to talk about this in the sense of using the word no in the form of rejection and how that actually leads to transformative growth. And this topic came out this week for a couple of different conversations that I've been having. And namely, I have several people in my own personal network who are going through professional career changes and they continue to apply to jobs, and AI is either rejecting their resume or they're getting further into the interview process. They hear the word no, and it becomes a really frustrating game.
Yeah.
And it can be painful at times to hear, but sometimes, let's actually backtrack a little bit. Ed Milet uses a very specific phrase in this type of transformative no, and that is things happen for you, not to you. And when you have the right mindset, when you hear that word no in whatever situation you're dealing with, when you flip your mindset and you say, hey, I'm going to use this constructively because it's going to teach me something, that process can actually teach you so much more about yourself, your mental resilience, and how you can grow and transform your life. So I want to just lay all this foundation for us to talk about. So with that said, what are your initial thoughts when you hear that?
No.
That was good. I like
Yeah,
it.
you're welcome. um, I agree. And I think this perspective of the word no doesn't get talked about enough, because you're right. People talk about it as you being in control and saying no to things that deter you from your goals or take away from your time. But less so do we talk about our own selves hearing no from someone else or from an opportunity, and how to reframe or use that as a means to actually grow in a different way, a faster way, et cetera. And I think that's really important because, like the example you were giving, I had someone that I was just talking with earlier who's in the job market as well. It's really hard. They're trying to figure out how to get through all the AI screenings and get in front of somebody, have a conversation, and all they hear is no, 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 no. And on one side, hearing no can be really depressing, especially when you hear it over and over and over, and there isn't that positive thing that comes on the backside where you get a little lift. And when people are in that phase of no over an extended period of time, that is actually where I think the most growth happens. Because I think I had sent you something on social media earlier this week talking about the difference between confidence and, what was the other word? It wasn't
Fiction.
conviction. Yes. That is when people hear no over and over and over, that's where your conviction comes into play, because that is the foundation of who you are, what you believe you're capable of, and what you are proud of yourself for, no matter what the external circumstances are. So when I think about hearing no, especially in those situations, that's where I go, that's where you look yourself in the mirror and say, who am I really am? And can I still be proud of myself in this moment in the face of all the no's? And what is the next step that I am going to take to move forward despite feeling like every answer is no?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I liked what you said about the conviction piece of it, because it is that self-belief. I think a lot of us apply for jobs knowing that we can do the job. We hear that no, and it immediately becomes some sort of self-reflection. We have to look ourselves, is it me? Is it me? Is it me? And I think sometimes it is. And sometimes
Sometimes.
there's, you and I have been on both sides of the coin of hiring people, of firing people, applying for jobs, trying to find kind of that next career step. And there's so many factors at play when you get into it. And sometimes it's not just, hey, your resume didn't meet this. Maybe you didn't have keywords. Maybe there was 7,000 people in front of you and you got too late. Maybe the manager was having a bad day. Like there's so many
So
things
many
that
things.
get into
Yeah.
it. And when you just hear no, there's a couple things that go through my mind. One, I look for patterns like I think most people do, right? When you get told no 20 times in a row, that becomes really defeating. But you have to ask yourself, am I the common denominator? Am I applying for things outside of what I think I can actually do? If you're applying for a CEO and you've only been a waitress before, like I'm sure there are opportunities where that comes into play, like it can be there, but like we do have to be realistic. I think the other thing though is, and I've done this in my own personal life, is I look for the patterns of, hey, am I just taking the same template, passing it along to the same person? Am I updating the cover letter that actually makes sense? Am I having the same conversations with people? Or how can I try to change things around? Can I react differently? Can I dress differently in job interviews? Can I, bring in different examples? Can I research the company ahead of time? And so I've learned to really use the first couple of no's as catalyst to say, okay, well, what can I do? How can I change the circumstances to figure out how to grow a little bit?
Yeah. And I think let's stay on that for a second because, as you know, I'm living this in real time, actually, on the flip side, interviewing people for coming on board. And I think of the interactions that I've had, right? And you see a bunch of resumes. And so, yes, some are going to be completely, you don't have the basic qualifications or experience, right? So that is something that that individual that heard no could take back and say, where do I need to fill the gaps in my experience or skills? But then there's things like you mentioned that are completely outside of someone's control and they're still going to hear no, but it's important to filter through what are things that I can actionably take that are common themes that I can parse out of it? And what are things that I can recognize might just be preferences of a hiring manager, which aren't really a negative for me when I hear no? It is just a fact that that manager is looking for a certain style of working or a certain, X, Y, and Z, or sometimes just chemistry between people, you're going to work well with them, right? So I think when people hear no, you might hear common themes, yes, but then you also take it one step further and say, of these common themes, are any of them just preferences that I can't control? And then which ones are actually things that I can do something about? And that's where you focus your time and attention
Mhm.
and avoid the funnel of self-pity that is really easy because I've been there, I'll say that, like, to go down that rabbit hole where it's, "No, well, then I must not be good enough, I must not have enough value, no one's ever gonna wanna hire me, why would I even continue to do this?" Like, that's the pattern that happens, and so whatever you can do to stay away from that negative pattern of self-talk and put into action the things that you can control is going to be the difference between if you end up over here or if you end up over here.
Yeah, 100%. And you actually talked about something yesterday that was really impactful that we need to bring into the conversation, which is don't ask, don't get. And so let's, staying on the track of interviews as an example, right? You're applying for another job, asking a question, even if you don't think you're going to get the job, but you don't really know, it's still good to have the dialogue. What are you guys looking for in the organization? What type of leader? What, does this mean to you? What other things can I share about my own experience that I may not have highlighted in my resume, right? Whatever it is, and obviously it's a little different when it's just an AI screening process and you get flat out notes, right? But at the same time, just in asking that question, you get more information back. So then it becomes, okay, well, maybe I need to sell myself a little bit better, right?
Yeah.
Maybe I need to provide more specific examples. Maybe I need to dress a little bit differently. And I want to expand this across a couple of other different areas of life, right? I think back to even like dating, back when I was actually dating many, many moons ago and like
Mighty
in
moon.
the bar scene and that, right? Guys get told no a lot. Well, guess what? Like maybe you're dressing like a slob. Maybe you're half drunk before you're approaching somebody. Maybe, you don't have the right opening line. And it's not always no, 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 because sometimes like it is you, but other times it's just how you're approaching a situation and it's not the entirety of you. Right. And so every opportunity out there that you get told no is an opportunity to learn something differently, right? I think back when I'm out there pitching and trying to raise money for our businesses. When that happens, I get told no a lot. Okay. Well, I have to ask myself if I'm getting told no a lot. What can I do? I oftentimes hear people say, watch yourself on camera, go pitch yourself. Well, it took me a long time to actually go do that because I
You're
didn't want to have to watch myself, but I did. And I was like, wow, I sound like this. That's horrible. Or like, hey, now I can see the slides on the screen and I can understand how I rushed right through things. Right. And so there is always this opportunity to apply the word no, even if it's not a direct, the word no, if that makes
right.
sense. Right. But like the situation doesn't result in an overall yes to move things forward. Where can you be doing things differently? How can you take accountability for your life? Challenge yourself to look into the details a little bit more. Ask that next question to help you grow in a transformative way.
Yeah. And I want to touch on, yesterday's topic feeding into this one, the don't ask, don't get, because when people hear no, as a general rule, we just hear no. And there isn't anything after that. And that is actually a great time when you hear the word no to maybe put in an ask, right? I mean, if it's a normal human being who has empathy for others, when you hear the word no, or you have to tell someone no, there is a little part of you that feels bad, right? You know you're saying something potentially really disappointing to someone, right? So even if it's a straight business decision or it's whatever, you're still saying no. And so when someone follows up with, I understand your decision, or I understand why you're saying that, would you be willing to X, Y, and Z on the back end of that? That actually can be a very positive step, because then the person, more often than not, will want to help in some way because of the fact that they said no. And I think when it comes to personal development or to working towards your goals or driving a business forward, we leave no as the final answer without the ask on the other side, because no harm, no foul, right? You don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And way to tie that in. That was a very good job. Yeah. I don't want to get into the topic of how to handle rejection because that's another whole separate topic that we could talk about for a while. But I do want to get into a little bit of how you amicably kind of walk away from the situation, how you really need to have like reset your expectations because I also think it's unreasonable for people to think like every job that I apply for I'm going to get, every girl or guy I ask out I'm going to get a resounding yes
Yeah.
because I'm this beautiful thing. And yet somehow in our minds we always think that way, right? We always think like I'm going to do this and of course it's going to be a yes. And that we never temper our expectations to be like, okay, I'm going to go try this. Nothing is guaranteed. So I need to be realistic about what my expectations are because if it's a no, how am I going to ask the next sort of questions? What am I going to gain out of it? Why am I going through this exercise? Because too many people, like you said, just kind of roll over and die. I think of it like a dog. It's like you just on your back and all of a sudden it's like, no, or like those jumping goats that, right. They just like freeze when they're scared. It feels like that sometimes. We're just like in midair you know, I say that because I do this too. And I know like part of my growth has really been I've got to be okay with a no. I don't expect it to come back to me. So I'm not going in and expecting things to be no. I do expect them to work out. But the reality is I have to play both sides and I can't take it personally. And this is where I like to have this conversation because you can ask 1,000 people on a date and it only takes one person to move your life forward. It's a different type of business investment. It's a different type of business partner. It's a different conversation with your boss or your skip level to get you to that next person. Maybe it's a mentor or a coach or whatever it is, but we keep chipping away because if everybody got whatever they wanted all the time, 100% of the time, life wouldn't be any fun. It is about rejection and things do happen for you to direct your path and people need to be okay with that.
Yeah, I actually have a couple of thoughts on that topic. And one of them you and I chatted about briefly yesterday. And it's a silly example, but I think it illustrates the importance of hearing the word no. And it, like when I think about parenting my children, right? If I, from the time they were born, I always said yes to everything. Yes, you can do that. Yes, you can try that. Yes, 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 yes. What would their journey of self-development and growth look like compared to what actually happened, which was sometimes the answer is no. And it's no for this specific reason or a reason that I don't need to explain to you, but I know is in your best interest. And those two paths of development actually produce very different results and human beings at the end of the day, because one has never had to face resistance as they've gone through a period of time. And one has learned how to hear the word no and change behavior or understand that sometimes things don't come with an explanation and you still need to keep going. And I think that's important for people as we get older as adults to be reminded of, because it's the same while we're not young children and we're still in control of our lives. Hearing the word no is still a critical element of growth and development, no matter how old you are.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Well, I think I've shared everything from my perspective, at least for now, on this topic. Anything else you want to leave the audience with?
No.
Well, I grew a lot from that response, so thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So that said, thank you for watching. If you have any feedback, if you have additional comments or topics you'd like us to cover, please drop a comment below. When this video is posted, we'd love to hear from you. And again, hopefully you can take a couple of these nuggets, apply to your own life, your own situation, grow a little bit every day. Let's get some of that compounding growth interest that happens over time. And as the saying goes, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is now. So let's start growing together and let's make this world a better place.
Sounds good. Thanks, Nate.
All
We'll talk
right.
to you
See you
soon.
next time. Bye.